All right, but the prize for the greatest personal debasement on January 6th has to go to Senator Ted Cruz. You guys may have seen this already, but there has been a sort of shift over the past year. On the day of January 6th, there was a lot of willingness among Republicans to say this was terrible, like this was awful, to use sort of strong language around it. And Ted Cruz, in particular, repeatedly used the word terrorist to describe those who were involved in January 6th. He says just the ones who were attacking police officers. Yes. That was not always apparent from the comments that he was making. So he went on Tucker Carlson's show on January 6th and effectively begged for forgiveness for using this word. Let's take a look at that confrontation.
I mean, there are a lot of dumb people in the Congress. You're not one of them. I think you're smarter than I am. And you never use words carelessly. And yet you called this a terror attack when by no definition was it a terror attack. That's a lie. You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
Well, Tucker, thank you for having me on. When you aired your episode last night, I sent you a text shortly thereafter and said, listen, I'd like to go on because the way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word, you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
So, Tucker, as a result of my sloppy phrasing, it's caused a lot of people to misunderstand what I meant. Let me tell you what I meant to say. What I was referring to are the limited number of people who engaged in violent attacks against police officers. Now, I think you and I both agree that if you assault a police officer, you should go to jail. That's who I was talking about. And the reason the phrasing was sloppy is I have talked dozens, if not hundreds of times. I've drawn a distinction. I wasn't saying that the thousands of peaceful protesters supporting Donald Trump are somehow terrorists. I wasn't saying the millions of patriots across the country supporting President Trump are terrorists. And that's what a lot of people have misunderstood that comment.
Wait a second, but hold on. What you just said doesn't make sense. So if somebody assaults a cop, he should be charged and go to jail. I couldn't agree more. We have said that for years. But that person's still not a terrorist. How many people have been charged with terrorism on January 6th? Like, why'd you use that word? You're playing into the other side's characterization that, as Joe Kent just explained, allows them to define an entire population as foreign combatants. And you know that. So why'd you do it?
So, Tucker, let me answer you directly. The reason I use that word, for a decade, I have referred to people who violently assault police officers as terrorists. I've done so over and over and over again. If you look at all the assaults we've seen across the country, I've called that terrorism over and over again. That being said, Tucker, I agree with you. It was a mistake to say that yesterday. And the reason is what you just said, which is we've now had a year of Democrats in the media twisting words and trying to say that all of us are terrorists, trying to say you're a terrorist, I'm a terrorist. And so, look, I don't like people who assault cops. And I stand up and defend cops. And the reason I use that word is that's the word I've always used for people that violently attack cops. But in this context, I get why people were angry, because we've had a year of the corrupt corporate media and Democrats claiming anyone who objected to the election fraud. And by the way, remember what was happening during those protests?
Can I ask, hold on, you work in the I guess I just don't believe you. And I mean that with respect, because I have such respect for your acuity and your precision. And I've seen it on display. I've covered you as a reporter. I know how you speak. And you have sat there for a year and watched people use language to distort the events of that day. Intentionally. Insurrection. Coup.
Of course it
terrorism.
Wasn't an insurrection. Saying it's an insurrection is a political term. It's a lie. I've repeatedly denounced it. And when it comes to, look, I was focusing on what I normally say. That what you aired was a little 15-second snippet. What I normally say is violence is wrong, peaceful protest is right. If you engage in violence, you should be prosecuted. If you're speaking, you have a right to speak. I say that all the time.
Well, Amen, and I agree.
All right, that's actually hard to watch, but there's a lot to say about this.
That's a very important clip.
Actually. Yeah, it is. So the first thing to say is that both of these dudes are full of it and slimy on this count, because I actually tend to side more with Tucker in terms of we shouldn't be throwing the word terrorism around. It is used to justify an expansion of the security state. We saw that with the Black Lives Matter protests, George Floyd protests, and we have seen it with January 6th. However, Tucker, very clear and very forceful on not calling these protesters terrorists, but he very casually called Black Lives Matter protesters terrorists previously. So that's one thing to put out there. With Ted Cruz, it's not like he just used this term once. He tries to play it like, he tries to play it like, I was sloppy in my wording. And Tucker, rightly, is like, here, give me a break. You are very precise with your words. You're a very intelligent person, and you did not use this casually. And actually, we have CNN track this. He said this 17 different times. Ted Cruz publicly described the Capitol riot as a terrorist attack at least 17 times, spanning at least 5 months before the time this week he got attacked for it by Tucker Carlson, and so is now claiming that it was just a sloppy slip-up. This was very intentional language from Ted Cruz, and I would have a lot more respect for him if he explained it and justified it, even though in some ways I disagree with, again, the casual using of the term terrorist to describe, people who were violent in the Capitol attack and even people who were violent in the Black Lives Matter protests. Neither one of them is being consistent and straightforward in this clip here ultimately, which is why it's kind of a mess.
I think you're right. And actually personally caused a self-assessment because I was like, hey, you know what? You shouldn't use the word terrorist whenever you throw it around, specifically because you can see how it's used by security state people. And so, yeah, even when it's in a group which you may not even agree with, you should be very careful about checking your rhetoric. I'm probably being very guilty of violating that, and I regret it. But that's the thing, too, about Ted Cruz, is that he was very clearly trying to triangulate here by saying, look, I'm one of those Republicans who's willing to call it out, just like I did BLM. Tom Cotton was another one of those folks. I think he even used the term insurrection the day afterwards. I'm not exactly sure. But he basically tried to meet it with the same way that he met with BLM. But it is just not acceptable for a lot of people within the Republican base. Now, I actually probably agree more with that type of framing just because of the policy ends that Tucker is obviously objecting to. But the problem here, and this is why I don't get, why go on in the first place and supplicate yourself this way? I don't get it. If it was part of a political strategy to try and win back white suburbanites, the Glenn Youngkin-style voter, while still being able to maintain MAGA, honestly, one Tucker attack, you would have been fine. It would have been a one-day story. But that clip went on for 6.5, almost 7 minutes, which in cable is eternity.
True.
For that to happen. And he came off looking insincere. Now he's insincere to the voters he was trying to win over, those suburban types. And the MAGA folks still look at him as Lion Ted. So you actually didn't come out more powerful at all. I mean, ultimately, we all know that he used it intentionally. I would have respected him more if he went on and said, look, this is what I say. I get why the left is doing this, and I don't agree with it. And that's it. And if you disagree with me, Tucker, that's fine. I'm the senator from the state of Texas, and ultimately I answer to them. Boom, I just gave you a good answer.
And I think I tend to err more on the side of, look, we should be very careful with these terms and they are weaponized. However, do I think there's a case you could make here, especially if you apply it consistently and make the argument? And do I think Ted Cruz, who is a, very intelligent person who does a lot of stupid things, do I think that he could, being the lawyer that he is, make that case in a way that was fairly good? Yeah, I think he's capable of that. And he had been actually consistent in calling both groups, regardless of their political ends and whether they serve your partisan interest or not, calling them both terrorists. So yeah, I would have respected it a lot more, even as I continued to disagree with him, if he actually came on and made the case. But I mean, this is just embarrassing, like to borrow a term from the right. He just completely cucked himself. Yeah. I mean, that's what it really is.
It's true.
It's a live, 6-minute long cucking, and it's completely embarrassing to watch. Again, Tucker is a total hypocrite on this. He also could have done his research and, brought up the fact that, hey, when it was the other side, you did call them terrorists, and let's have a conversation about why you see that in a different way. I'm the one with the consistent standard here, but instead he just sort of debases himself and begs for forgiveness.
Yeah, and
humiliating.
That's the thing too. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, at the end of the day, did you really win back the MAGA base? I don't think so. I think they would have respected you more if you stood up and said, look, this is my view. At the end of the day, I stand with President Trump, and everybody knows that. You could have just done that. I've seen Lindsey Graham do it. I've seen Jim Jordan do it. A lot of these guys who disagree with Trump necessarily on policy, but still are like, I'm a defender of the president. It was a totally unnecessary move. It made you look worse, and actually, it hurt the ultimate goal, which is if you do want to run for president again. Now everybody thinks you're insincere. You did supplicate yourself on national television and just, submitted to a public flogging, and at the same time, now you also are a hypocrite in terms of what you're doing. So just a total loss across the board. It's honestly sad. It was pathetic.
It was indeed. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.